Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the Daily Dose. I'm Dr. Lance Garrison. I'm a psychologist that specializes in health psychology and behavioral medicine, and I serve as the Dean for the College of Professional Psychology at the Chicago School. There are certain inner attitudes that are kind of like the soil of our minds. And when we cultivate them intentionally, we create rich ground where mindfulness can begin to take root and even flourish. And these are attitudes that can't be forced. They're not commands that we follow or rules that someone has laid down and set for us. They're chosen, they're nurtured, and they're grown from within. And we practice them because we've seen what happens when we don't. When we finally reach that point where we no longer want to add to our own confusion or our own suffering, or frankly, to anyone else's. And when we do that, something begins to shift. We begin to care for our minds the way that a gardener cares for the land. Ethical awareness, which may sound outdated to some, becomes something deeply personal to us, not because someone's watching, not because there's some threat of punishment, but because we feel it inside in our bones. I once heard ethics defined as obedience to the unenforceable, and I really like that definition because it speaks to the idea that we live by certain values not because we have to, but because we actively choose to, because there's something in us that hears a deeper call and feels a rhythm that we want to align with. Now, I think patience is one of these fundamental ethical attitudes, and it's a beautiful one to explore. Because when you practice patience, you're actually practicing mindfulness. You're training yourself to stay with what is in the moment without rushing ahead or without pushing away. It's kind of a quiet remembering that life unfolds in its own time and space, just like the seasons can't be hurried. Spring comes and the grass grows, right? It just happens. Now, being in a hurry often doesn't help. In fact, it usually adds suffering to us. And frankly, it adds suffering to those around us. And when you look beneath impatience, what do you find? You often find anger, frustration, the deep, fiery energy of not wanting things to be as they are. And the anger around that can be quiet or loud, subtle or sharp, but it's definitely there. Impatience is rarely just about being late. It's about resistance to reality. But patience doesn't mean that you can't move fast when you need to. You can hurry, but you got to do it patiently and mindfully, consciously choosing to speed and not being dragged along by it. Because from the perspective of patience, everything's connected. Everything. Nothing stands alone in and of itself. Every single event is the result of countless others that came before. So where does the blame begin? And then where does it end? If someone strikes you with a stick, do you get mad at the arm that held the stick? Do you get mad at the stick? Do you get mad at the person behind the arm? And what about the person? What if the person is suffering deeply and acting from a place of ignorance or their own past pain or trauma? If that's the case, do we begin to blame the parents? Do we blame society? Do we blame the world? And honestly, what is the world if not us as well? We all carry anger, even violent, destructive impulses that can arise in us. But when we start to recognize this, we can open a door to compassion, not just for those that we love, but for those that we fear, or those that we resent, or those that we just can't find a way to understand. The Dalai Lama once shared that despite the suffering inflicted on his people, he holds no hatred for the Chinese government. And when he was asked why, he said, "They've taken everything from us. Should I let them take my mind as well?" And I think that's peace. That's true peace. And it's not just the absence of anger or conflict, but the inner strength to stay balanced in the face of it. The quiet power to remain whole when everything else around feels like it's broken or coming apart. And that peace begins right here. It begins in this moment. It begins in how we meet our breath, in how we meet ourselves, in how we meet others. And when frustration arises during meditation or in the course of our life, when we feel impatient or angry or lost, we can take a moment to remember that the quality of this next moment depends in large measure on how we are right now. So we breathe, we return, and we keep tending that soil. Because what grows there with time, what grows there with patience, with love, can transform everything. Until next time, be well.